President Donald Trump has signed another executive orders. The executive orders, girl, I thought there was a limit, but the limit does not exist. And this time he signed an executive order to dismantle the education department. Yes, you heard that right. The education department. So if you don't know what the education department is, this department manages federal student loans, distributes funding for kindergarten to 12th grade school programs, helps schools economically that support low income areas, and it helps fund programs that are under the Disabilities Education Act. The list goes on. They help anything that's relating to the education department. They help kind of like, you know, with the money and just finding ways to like make it more equitable for people that, you know, have disabilities or are in areas that probably don't get funded enough to get a good quality education.
Mm-hmm.
So clearly Donald Trump feels like that is a problem, right? And another point that I want to make is some people will say, well, yeah, we do need to take the education department into our own hands and tell our kids, like, we should be in charge of what our kids learn in schools. But the gag is that the education department is not in charge of that, right? The US education department has no say in curriculum matters. It does not set requirements for enrollment and graduation in schools, nor does it have a say in the selection or use of school or library books, textbooks, or resources, right? So if you remember during Donald Trump's campaign, he was talking about like, oh, we don't want people learning about, you know, people who are gay or transgender, or he's trying to ban books. The education department has nothing to do with that. That is already handled by local school officials. So again, this is all very much very performative because he can't just dismantle the education department. Legislations would have to be passed through Congress. And again, we're just focusing on things that are not a problem. God forbid where the education department is helping fund, you know, resources or schools that are helping people who have disabilities, that yes, they do need more money because they need to, you know, make the school accessible, right? Create ramps or all these extra stuff. If some people have like a harder time, a learning disability, right? Yes, they might need more technology than in another school because that's the way they need to learn. Like, it's just very, what is the reason? And again, we are getting exactly what Donald Trump said he was going to do. So I don't want to say zero respect, but for the people that are like, oh, well, I thought, I didn't know, or didn't,
Like, you
no.
chose to be clueless. Like, my thing is, sometimes people are like, oh, well, you guys are reading between the lines. No, baby, it was fine print. It was fine print. And
First
my thing is,
paragraph.
literally, first paragraph, first sentence, first like capital letter, like everything. And my whole thing is like when I saw that this was announced and stuff, I seen like a lot of like people who are in Congress and stuff like that tweeting like, we'll see you in court, basically type of vibe. And I'm like, okay, but it's just like, it's like you said, it's very much what was the reason, because it's just what is your end goal out of all the issues that we have? This is like your main point. And so people are like, yeah, he's gonna help ban books. It's like, y'all don't think that's weird to ban books? Like, y'all don't think that like there's something wrong with that?
But also, the Department of Education has nothing to do with what
Exactly.
books are used in schools. Like, and that's why I think it's so important for us to talk about these things, because I know a lot of people are not listening to the news, right? They just read the headlines. So I just want to make it clear, don't be fooled. The education department is not the one that is in charge of picking what books your kid reads at school. And I strongly believe that yes, public education is key. If you are blessed to have all this money and you don't like what is being taught in public schools, grab your little kid and your money and homeschool or pay somebody to teach your kids. Because I think it is so, as someone that went through the public education system, it's just very triggering what people, at the end of the day, this is always going to impact, like, these laws are going to impact minorities, people with disabilities, anyone that has the other are always the ones that are going to be impacted the most by these changes or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
federal funding, like school loans to go to college. What? Like, why would you want to reduce that?
And
Shouldn't we want more people to be educated? They don't want that, but that's a topic for another day.
one of the reasons why I was laughing is because while we were on the cruise, like when Roselli told us that she was in Belize, I got in the elevator and
Oh,
it was like us and like a bunch of other people. And like, I was like, where even is Belize? And this little boy, like, he had to be like 8.
young.
He was like, it's in Africa. And I was like, oh, okay. So I was like,
I like geography.
right. He's like, I love geography. And so I was like, I'm gonna still look that up. And so this old dude who's behind us, like, he must have been tired of hearing things. He was like, it's in South America. It's next to Honduras. I was like, ooh, education system.
Right. This is what we should be pouring into the education department, not trying to dismantle it.
It was just so funny because he was truly calm. He was like, Africa.
You know, he go to like a non-public school. He going to if you don't get homeschooled, because the mom also clocked him real quick. She was like, well, no, it's this. He either go homeschooled or he goes to like one of the top schools. But anyways, we just wanted to clear that up because it's gonna be in the headlines, and those are things that we think that you should be aware
I
of.
just want to mention really quickly, apparently also in the headline, people think that Trump is bringing back segregation.
Well, kind of, sort of. You
Yes.
know what I
Okay.
mean?
So yes. Okay. Let me just like they're no longer going to require a ban on segregated facilities and government contracts. And I just think yes, in a way, technically, yes. So USA Today, they put the Trump administration is no longer requiring explicit prohibition on segregated facilities and the government contracts. There was a memo that was sent on February 15th that the U.S. General Services Administration basically segregation is still illegal in the US, but the memo states that contractors are still subject to laws under civil rights and all these other stuff. But technically, yes, but technically no. Basically,
What you mean? Technically, yes. Technically, no. What?
technically it's not like segregation everywhere, but
But I feel like there's always been ways. Like, let's say, for instance, this whole thing, right? Like, let's say they do push back on the amount of federal student aid that you get.
yes,
Who's gonna be impact that? Like,
that's
Latinos, Black people, because the white people that already have generational money, they're good. They still gonna get the education.
right.
So I think there's segregation has always been there. It's just the way it is put in front of us may look differently, right? Like, again, when we talk about small businesses, right? The amount of money that Black owned businesses get is not the same as a white male owner. So I think it still exists, right? Regardless of if it's
In some
illegal
shape
or
or
not.
form, yes.
Exactly.